I've been surprised. I'm at 53,000 followers on TikTok.
That's pretty strong.
Which is ridiculous.
For a 45-year-old dude from Starkville, Mississippi.
That just post a bunch of just stupid dad stuff.
You're listening to the Good for Business podcast, where we feature interviews, tips, and tricks from owners, operators, and innovators throughout Mississippi and around the world. And now, your host, Colin Krieger. Welcome to the show this week. My guest is Terry Long, Regional Director for Walk-Ons Sports. Is that correct?
That's right, for our franchise here in Mississippi.
All right. How many stores does that involve?
We got 2 right now, working on our 3rd location. It's going to be in Tupelo. We're just working on the location right now.
That's awesome. Where's the second one? Is
South Haven.
And is that one up and rolling and rocking?
Up and rolling. I'm headed that way as soon as we finish up here.
I've been watching you on the Tickety Talk doing that. You're pretty. Don't be humble. How popular are you for you're not quite middle age. How old are you?
I'm 45.
You're getting there. So
I'm there. Yeah.
How popular are you on the Tickety Talk?
I've been surprised. I'm at 53,000 followers on TikTok.
That's pretty strong.
Which is ridiculous.
For a 45-year-old dude from Starkville, Mississippi.
That just post a bunch of just stupid dad stuff and husband stuff.
No, well, it's incredible. I tell people about Facebook, just document, don't sit there all day waiting. We were talking before the podcast came on about getting a podcast started and how you get all these excuses and limiting beliefs in your way and all that sort of stuff, and slows you down a little bit.
It does. You can get in your own way a lot.
Yeah. So tell me a story. So I've done 20 years in food service. My stepfather was a chef. I worked in every restaurant in New Orleans and around the world. What was your first job when you were a little bitty youngster walking around?
First job, I was 14, which it probably wasn't legal. I was actually washing dishes at a mom and pop restaurant outside of Hatley, Mississippi.
Okay.
I would I'd wash dishes on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. I'd get paid $25. And I got to take a plate of food home, and it was whatever, and it was a fish and steakhouse. So sometimes it was catfish, sometimes it was steak, which translated to it was about 5 hours of shift. So I was making $5 an hour in 1994. Minimum wage was $4.25. The government doesn't listen to this, right? Because I didn't pay taxes on any of that.
They can't hear any of this. So. Yeah, I think they can only go back 7 years. And I've been working full time in restaurants. I was 13.
Yeah,
and I'm definitely sure that was illegal. I remember that. I was like, how are y'all giving me a paycheck? And when I get 48, 50 hours a week sometimes.
Well, yeah, but you were in New Orleans in Louisiana.
Yeah, it's not. That's lawless wasteland.
What kind of laws do they really have?
That's what I tried to figure out. My senior year of high school, I worked about 70 hours every week, and I had paychecks from 3 different places. And I'm thinking, there are absolutely. I was serving drinks at 15 and all that. So, all right. So you're just washing dishes. That's it.
That was my first job. I got fired because I sprained my ankle jumping off of a trampoline into a swimming pool, and I couldn't walk, couldn't stand. And I called him. I said, "Hey, can't make it in." He said, "Well, then you don't bother coming back then." And that was also my first time to get fired.
Yeah, I've been fired once. So everybody gets fired once. Where'd you move on to from there?
When I was younger, I worked at Sonic for a couple of years in the kitchen, Sonic Drive-In in Amory. And then I worked at the Walmart Supercenter in Amory not long after it opened, a couple of years after it opened. Worked in the garden center, and I love that job. That was a job where if it got busy or crazy or wild inside, I could slide outside because there was always something that needed to be loaded, organized, washed, clean. And if it got too hot outside, I could come right back inside.
I worked at the Kmart. That's where I got my shoulders from. I got at the Kmart Garden Center while I was working at a butcher shop and a restaurant, loading giant pallets of dirt up in people's cars, assembling furniture and stuff. There
was always this happy number because I got forklift certified, so I could drive the forklift, which was wild for a 17-year-old. I had no business driving that forklift. I was good at it, just as long as I wasn't on camera. But you wanted them to come in on those rainy days. They needed to order enough so that you could use that, so you could just load the pallet onto the trailer. It was the little old ladies that wanted to come in on the rain and needed 20 bags, and that you couldn't use a forklift. You just had to lug them. They were sometimes in the back of a truck or the trunk of a car.
Yeah.
And you're wet and you're just getting all that fertilizer, and I smelled great when I came home.
But can you and now I'm almost 50, you're 45. You go to pick up one of those bags, they seem a lot heavier. I think,
yeah.
I was picking up 3 and 4 routinely on the shoulder.
100%.
You could load 8 on them like that.
I was He-Man. There was no pain. Get up the next morning, no issues. You sleep on your arm wrong now, and it's like, what did I do?
A little tough, yeah. So where'd you go on from Kmart land or Walmart land?
When I stayed at Walmart for a few years, I went to ICC, and so I transferred from the Amory to the Fulton Walmart, and did that while I was at ICC. And I eventually left there, and my first real full-service gig was at Harvey's in Tupelo. I got on as a server. Me and my wife had just got married. I said, I was still in school, so this would allow us to make some money around a school schedule. My plan in college was I wanted to go for an athletic trainer. I was going into sports medicine, kind of the ideas, to get paid to go watch, sporting events on the sideline. And somebody gets hurt, I do what I can to help them. But then, hey, that's real bad. Go see a real doctor. And then I was out. You know, I was like, it's going to be great. I get to travel. I get to, see all these different games, high school sports, college sports, or whatever. And then when I got into the full service restaurant, I fell in love with it. I was like, this is this mad chaos that is so rewarding immediately as a server, because and there was challenges. I was newly married. My wife would say, hey, electric bill's due tomorrow. We need $75. Like, bet, then let's go. And so there was that gratification. The teamwork was there. I've been doing it now for over 25 years, and I've never had the same day twice.
Well, I was a little scared because not everybody's done back house, front of house when people have 10 plus years in food service, and I have, and you have, and it's a different mentality.
Oh,
for
absolutely.
For both. I mean, and I would immediately switch, and it was interesting because like my last 6 years were at Papa John's Pizza, which you're doing both at the same time if you're the manager, but I would still have the sling the food in the oven like this mother, and then 2 minutes later I'm like, you can't yell at the customers. These people love you, and it's a different mentality, and something that's changed with more restaurants than I can even imagine. So at Harvey's, I can't imagine y'all were doing team tips or group tips. Or
No.
Do y'all do that at Walk-Ons? Or
no, the only time we ever pool or split tips if there's a party, like the one our Walk-Ons in Starkville has a banquet room. 2 servers work it; they'll split that. But no, it's.
I am not a fan of that. Some of my friends who have restaurants do it. To me, there's some de-incentivation. Plus, you may be the person that fills everybody's drinks up, and then you see the guy you're helping just goofing off in the back. So
yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of pool tips. I get it in probably certain types of scenarios where it might work. But yes, there's definitely somebody that is getting paid more for doing less, and there's somebody getting paid less for doing more 100% of the time.
Yeah, and most of the great waiters of all time are waiting tables and not even looking at the tip. They're picking up the book and thanking people the same way. I have that very blank look on my eye for some things like that. When somebody gives me something, I'm like, thank you. And they're like, you going to look at the card? I'm like, I just trained myself for years to be like, just sincere thanks, even if I know it's a horrible tip, So
yeah, it's and that was, I learned a lot about that when I was, talking front of house and back of house. Walk-Ons would call it heart of house, which I actually like that mentality, because that is why people go out to eat is for the food. But I was, you get there and you're waiting tables and you're learning things and learning the whole language of a restaurant, which I know every, industry has their own like lingo and language. And listening to you and my wife talk real estate, sometimes I'm like, what? They're using a lot of initials here. I don't know what any of that means, but y'all are just rolling, but learning that. And, I got where I was waiting tables and I got good at it. And I actually said, I want to go into the kitchen. I want to learn some of that. What are y'all doing back there? I want to learn how to cook. So they gave me some opportunities, and I, started being back there. Then they started putting me back on Friday and Saturday nights. I was like, time out. You pay me well, but I make a lot more money on Friday, Saturday night waiting tables than I can in the kitchen. But what was cool about that diversity is you'll see that restaurant completely different. If you're going in to be a cook, you're going in the same 4 walls that the server is, but that restaurant looks different, and vice versa, which was another reason I just really dialed into this industry, because it was just like, that was so cool that I could work at the same job but it not feel like the same job.
Completely different world. I worked at some high-end restaurants like Christian's and Broussard's in New Orleans, where the waiters did not step by there, did not step back other than making creme brulee and bread in a little warming oven. You didn't step back, you didn't talk to them, anything like that. Like, if they forgot something, you'd wait. Like, you messed this up. But other than that, they're going to hold the ticket in your face. And I think back of house more than front of house, the weak talent stands out. Like, you probably know, I think you have a high school kid washing dishes and then you let him move on to wait staff or whatever, and you can have a lazy busboy or somebody's not checking for drinks or refills. But in the kitchen, less people in there, and the good guys stand out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's, there's so much talent, that, and you don't even realize it sometimes. Like, and you can be surprised. Sometimes that high school kid it clicks with them, and maybe it's because maybe they cooked with their mom or grandparents or something like that when they were growing up. But to see it when it clicks is really cool in the kitchen. Almost front of house wise, server wise, everybody has usually 2 to 5 week. Like, it takes 2 to 5 weeks out of training for it to click, and then they're just doing the systems. In the kitchen, it's got to click a lot faster. You don't have that grace period to get it right, because you don't
get a pot thrown at your head. I've had so many knives and forks and stuff thrown at me. Plus, and I always looked at it from when you're in front of house, you're waiting tables, you're on. Like, you kind of standing up straight. You got to be sharp. You get a little time to whine and bitch to your friends when you're there. But the kitchen, like, you're living with them. You're interacting for the whole 8-10 hour shift. Sometimes it's harder to see what's coming, which is the scary part, is when nobody gives you a heads up that a 20 top just sat down, and you don't guess how many fries you got to keep down. And part of that communication that gets better in corporate environments at Papa John's, we used to say, you're only as good as your prep. Like, I ran the Oxford store when I was leaving. Now is the busiest store in the country, or one of the busiest. They're not they're not cutting one green pepper. They're cutting 3 boxes of green peppers.
Oh, yeah.
And they're opening 300 cans of sauce a day. Like, you better be ready, because if they let you down, there's no catching up once you get in the weeds.
Oh, yeah. No, if you're behind, you don't catch up, and it's, doing as long as I've done, it's been wild to be able to project those expectations. Like, when I first got into management with Eat With Us, every morning the chef would have to print off the sales report on a ticket just on the printer, and that ticket was probably 30 feet long, and would go to an Excel spreadsheet and plug in, I sold this many chickens fixins, I sold this many, ribeyes, I sold this many catfish, and you in an Excel spreadsheet, and it would calculate, okay, you sold this many this week, so next week, if you do the same in sales, this is kind of what you expect to do. And then you would build prep sheets and food orders from that. I mean, it was probably 2 to 3 hours worth of work on that chef just to build the expectations. And now I can do that from my phone. All that information is up to the minute, which is great, because now these chefs can actually spend more time with their people versus on the systems and on the thing, which is probably why I think a lot of chefs were so angry, because when they're not supposed to be sitting at a computer for 2 to 3 hours at a time.
Yeah, take the guy that failed out of high school algebra. Which I was on that list too, and I remember watching hours of my stepfather looking at a notebook and going, "Oh, we need this much prime rib." And then, of course, you're in a college town, so you're factoring in not only the normal sways of paychecks and is it raining, is it going to be a bad rainstorm, but you got game day weekends. Oh, and like we had all the, the data's changed a lot. I'm sure it's much better now than it was 15 years ago. But that's the biggest difference, I think, between small restaurants and corporate restaurants. But Doug at Zachary's here, who owns Coffee Depot in Starkville, is a master at it for an independent restaurateur. But he's like, he'll ask me, he's like, "Is there a soccer tournament this weekend?" Like, because those are the things that you're at 7:30 and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, cut everybody, it's dead." Well, it's dead because everybody's at the soccer tournament.
Yeah. And, and Doug is great. He's so good at what he does. But those, working in Tupelo, if you were to look at a weekly, monthly, annual sales graph, it was along the same line. You see a couple of spikes, a couple of drops, 4th of July weekend, it probably dropped, but in Starkville, it is, Labor Day weekend, is one of the slowest weekends of the year when there's no home football game in Starkville. But we're about to go through 4 weeks in a row, 4 weekends in a row, which is awful.
Yeah, I noticed Ole Miss had the same thing where they have both teams have 3 on 4 off sort of situation.
And that's brutal.
Because once you get in the third week, like people want time off, and they're just
in a college town, front of house staff especially is almost all college students part time. They're looking for. I'm looking for 4 or 5 shifts a week, and these shifts typically last 3 to 6 hours. When you get to a home football game weekend, it's the same. You're probably adding a shift for everybody, but those shifts are now 6 to 9 hours. And first weekend, they're like, "That's awesome." Second weekend, "This is great. We got all this money. I've already got next month's bills covered." And then they get to the third week like, I'm tired of this crap. Like, I don't want to work this much. And they're getting behind on schoolwork and these other things. And in the kitchen, it's that same, it's, those hours, it might be an 8-hour shift for them, but it's, 2 hours to set up and get started, and then a 2-hour at the end where you're kind of breaking down. So it only leaves about 4 hours of grind. Yeah. On game weekend, it's an 8 or 9 hours, and it's 8 or 9 hours of grind. And you do that 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a row, and
And then the game has some effect. The visiting crowd has some effect.
The game time, how the game's going, the weather, like you said, all of that. So you've got to keep people on in case something crazy, wild happens. The first year we opened at Walk-Ons, what team was it? Had lightning delays.
That's what I was about to bring up, the lightning delays.
And it was fantastic for business. And it was a night game, so it was one of those things where we probably were staffed a little bit lighter. But because of the weather, we said, "Hey, hold on, get some folks. If they're willing to take a little break." We actually ordered pizza. We do that on game days. We'll order pizza for the staff because I don't want our front of house staff ordering food for already, overworked cooks to cook them food. So we'll bring in pizza for everybody, high carb. You can get a lot for a little, and everybody's happy. I said, let them sit down, take a break, give them some pizza. And then I was at the game and was walking in, and it was like, hey, hold on to folks. I don't see this game. This game could get extended. And then it was extended. And it was fantastic. It ended up being our record day at the time. But yeah, if you weren't prepared for that, if you weren't ready for any of those circumstances, then it could have been real bad.
Well, and that's, part of it is that watching that labor goes. Like, essentially a kitchen can get maxed out, and you can deal with, the kitchen staff's got to be here if you talk to your boss. But like you said, if you're there on a Saturday night and you've got, 20 waiters and 10 busboys and 4 hostesses and 3 bartenders,
twiddling
and then you're just watching this thing goes. And like, there's some types of restaurants like pizza place and stuff like, you can fold boxes, you can do prep or this sort of stuff. When you're in a semi-formal situation where y'all are, where you're trying to be attentive, like you can roll silverware, but eventually you get it all rolled.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one when you're waiting for a game. Ole Miss had a game when I was up there that went in like triple overtime. And we were just like, the drivers were just like dying. That store was already open until 3 or 4 in the morning. We were sitting here at 11:30, like, we're still cooking pizzas at the stadium. And we're like, the day crew's literally falling asleep on their feet. And people don't have any idea when they go in there. And that's something we talked about before we came on here. Like, I made sure my oldest daughter worked at Zachary's. Mm-hmm. She was making a fortune babysitting and pet sitting. But I was like, you need to go there and suffer. You need to go there and get yelled at for no reason, get hit on for no reason, get in the weeds. Now, they very rarely get in the weeds because they throw so much labor at Zachary's, at like front of house staff, that it's got to be something catastrophic in the kitchen,
right?
Because they're prepping for 2 days.
Yeah, I think I think that the food service and probably and health and medical services are probably, if you work at a hospital, you work in a restaurant, those are probably the most chaotic places to work, but you also see how people really are, and not a person, but people. You'll see how community is by working in a restaurant, or if you work in healthcare, people that treat servers like crap are probably not very good people. People that are patient with a new server, those are probably the best people in the world, and I said the same thing. I said, all of my kids, y'all are going to work in a restaurant in some capacity. And so far, 2 of my 3 have. The youngest isn't old enough to yet. Well, he would be. Had he been, from when we were.
Yeah.
He's 13 now, so he could have been. 40 years ago, he'd be working. But just because I think that you need to see that chaos, you need to see that. You also need to see the teamwork. There is, the amount of relationships, and whether I'm not even talking. I mean, I've actually officiated a couple of weddings of former employees that met at the restaurant because I hired two people that met, and they're like, "We want you to do it," but. The lifelong relationships, friendships. I still, I was at Harvey's in Tupelo as a server in 2001, and I still talk to some of the people I waited tables with, primarily through Facebook or social media. Maybe not weekly, but at least monthly. We're sending texts, we're sending messages. So you make these relationships because the only people that know what you've gone through at that restaurant are the people that went through it with you. It's. Whether you want, I know that you hear that a lot in the military side, and not that we do anything like what the military goes through, but that camaraderie that I went through this with you, and those are the people you hang out with. You will inadvertently fall away from some of maybe who your close friends were before you get into the restaurants, because the people that you're in the restaurant with become your closest friends.
It's like going through a traumatic experience. My wife was my boss at Papa John's in New Orleans, and of course that store is hold the national records for years. The big store there because of Mardi Gras. And we were there. She did probably 65 hours. In 3 days. You were just there and sleep. We'd sleep in the walk-in and stuff, and probably nightmare stuff. And then I came here 20 years ago this week to run the Papa John's here, and Wade and Will Leonard were there, and Octavius Hinton, and Steve-O, who's pretty popular here at Zachary's. He's at Zachary's now. He's in the pest control business. But he met his wife at the restaurant, and I still know those people from there, whereas I've had people in other walks of life where I don't know where they went to.
Yeah.
So you went from Tupelo, Harvey's to Starkville? Or?
Okay. So, the E with us was a fun journey. So, Harvey's, Tupelo, was there for 2 years, and I worked my way into an hourly management role. They promoted me to a salary. So I went from there to the old Cotton District Grill, where I trained there for a couple of months over on Maxwell Street. And that was to put me as the bar manager at the Grill in Columbus. It was the Grill in Columbus for right about a year. And then I went to the Harvey's in Columbus for about a year.
When were you at the Harvey's in Columbus?
2000, it would have been 2002. 2002, 2003, a little bit of both of those.
Okay.
And then went back to Harvey's Tupelo as an AGM, assistant general manager, and was there for right at a year. And I came to Starkville in 2005, which I think is the same year you came to Columbus.
That's when we came up with Katrina,
We moved to Starkville in 2005, and I became the GM. That was my first GM role at the Harvey's there. Was there for 4 or 5 years, came back to Columbus and was the GM at the Grill here for a couple of years. Left there, went to the Grill in Starkville, where I was a total of 10 years. I was at the Grill where it is now at Central Station. It was a year after they made the move. They brought me over there. I did run both grills for couple of months at one point while I had a really strong AGM in Starkville, and they didn't have a GM, so I was kind of doing a little bit of double duty there for a couple of months while we trained.
I can't speak more highly of the Bean family. And when I talk about, I'll talk about Columbus and I take them a little 40-minute tour, and most of the time I'm giving a tour of people who are stuck coming here, and they think so factories will call me or something. It may be real estate related, but most of it is, this guy's coming, he thinks he's coming to a one-stoplight town. So I'm not talking him into it, but I'm like, hey, you're coming to the Golden Triangle. And I'll be like, hey, these guys have this many franchise restaurants, and this is the one. So this Harvey's is going to be good. Pepper's is going to be good. I can be like, it's going to be good because they live here.
Yeah.
It's also an example I give, and I'm breaking out of context here, but I tell people who have the dream of owning a restaurant. And who doesn't usually have the dream of owning a restaurant is people who did what you and I did, supervisors and managers. They have the dream of getting a representative percentage or maybe owning 5 or 10. But during COVID, when the S hit the fan, Do you know who was at Zachary's every single day? Was Doug. Do you know Mr. John was at United Deli? The Beans, father and son, were in the kitchen at Harvey's.
Oh, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, you're not, the Huck boys are always at Huck's, but like, you're not, there's no dream of escaping this. We're not Drew Brees. Right. Does a great job. Oh, my Lord and Savior, Drew Brees, who changed my life. But Drew Brees, by the way, is involved with the Walk-Ons franchise in New Orleans. Is he involved with y'all's as well?
So he's at the founders level. It's a fun story. Let me say something.
Drew Brees is not on Fry Station.
Though. No. He did do Undercover Boss where he washed dishes.
I saw that.
Real quick, going back to the Beans, John, for years on Valentine's, would hit all of his restaurants in Columbus before he would take his wife out for Valentine's dinner to make sure, were they staffed, any issues, any nightmares, is all your equipment working? And I remember one time he got stuck. I think it was the grill in Columbus. He washed dishes on Valentine's for like 6 hours because I think a dishwasher called out, or maybe the dishwasher, the machine went down or something, and there, just needed more hands because when you're washing everything by hand, all of a sudden you don't have enough hands to do it. So he wasn't able to do a Valentine's dinner with his wife that year. That's what it was equipment, because if I'm not mistaken, that following Monday, it was a different company that had that that dish machine because they wouldn't come out to fix it. And he said, okay, well, but yeah, I mean, that's who they are. That's what they do. And they are incredible people and advocates for their community.
Well, you can see it from y'all had, like, Walk-Ons had franchise development professionals on it from day one. Mm-hmm. Beans are teaching themselves this. Now it would be easier to start to say, I'm going to franchise because there's technology and all this other stuff. But like, they're on their 6th or 7th POS system since I've known them in 20 years because they're like, the first 3 were ours.
Yeah.
We had to develop on ourselves. And like, I was at Papa John's, we were tearing tickets. I was at restaurant, there was no POS thing in most of my years in the restaurant business. And yeah, going back to helping, my wife was a national level dough slapper. Like, we had contests and stuff like that, one of the fastest it's ever been. She could probably still do it. We left Papa John's in 2010, moved down here, and we would still, because I got free pizza for a long time, eventually to the point where I had to tell my friend who owns Papa John's, like, it's okay. Yeah. And now my daughter's back at Ole Miss, and I'm like, hey, Trey Weigel, I'm going to plug Papa John's. Papa John's, the best pizza in North Mississippi. All 4 locations in Columbus, Tupelo, Starkville, and Ole Miss, run by Trey Weigel, VDT, is who I call him. So I should be hitting him up for free pizza. We, until late 2014 and 15, if we would pick up our pizzas because they're free. We're not going to ask them to deliver them. And if they're in the weeds, we'd go in there and blow their mind. And I've been there in a full suit, dishing out pepperonis, telling them, y'all should freeze the pepperonis so they go out quicker. I'm doing 2-handed stuff, measure, and they're like, the kids stop and looking at us. We're like, we got it. Go answer the phone. And I'd be like, don't put people on hold. What are you doing? He's like, do you work here, sir?
I've got a couple of guys on our Starkville Walk-Ons management team that have Papa John's history. They were with Papa John's, and when we got last year, Walk-Ons did this really cool tailgate box. They were basically smaller pizza boxes. And these 2 dudes talk so much smack to each other about, I'm faster than he was. No, you were. I'm now faster than you. And neither of these guys have folded a box probably in months or years.
That's a big deal.
But it doesn't matter. They were like, no, I'm still the fastest of all. Like, it's wild.
We should get your employees to fight over prep. I had 2 people in Oxford that fought over prep like that. And I want to take a quick break because I would assume Brian Haydad from the ESPN Radio, yes, or now Super Talk. And I am so proud of him because what we're going to get into, and part of it's imposter syndrome, part of it's wearing a stained shirt and seeing your friend who's an accountant come in or whatever. There's something deep inside a lot of restaurant managers, and he was the manager of the Papa John's in Starkville and did a phenomenal job, that he literally stopped and started doing commentary on the side for ESPN Radio. Then it built to something, then online, and now he's essentially one of the voices of Mississippi State, living his dream job. And if he stuck somewhere at 9:00 on Saturday night, it's a stadium. That is so cool because some people think they have this thing where they have to escape. And especially the smaller, if it's a local restaurant, they're that's the hardest part, is to keep somebody at the restaurant because they just think the grass is always greener on the other side if the money isn't there. We're very lucky in Mississippi to have not only the Beans and your group and Papa John's that are very management heavy. Like they take care of their managers. Now they're realizing more in the last 10 years the cost of losing a GM, as opposed to like a single owner might be like, you're not doing this, blah, blah, blah. They're like, we're going to try to train them, because even they've got, easily $100,000 invested in training you, easily. Even if you just talk time and learn it, and then let you do cool stuff like open other stores.
Yeah.
That's always was one thing for me. Like I was making tremendous amount of money at Papa John's, but I kind of had the flower on my shirt when I got home, and it's just part of it, because when you were the busboy or the thing, you still have that little,
Yeah, it's, moving into this role that I'm in now, it was hard for me not to do the job. Like I'd go to these restaurants, and there's just two right now, but I'd walk in and I'd just take over. I mean, and just do that's just what I did, step in and, and then get done with the shift. I'm, work a 14-hour shift, which was nothing. Still to this day, I can work a 14-hour shift and, let's go have dinner. It's just what we do. And, but then I get home and be like, what did I do? Yes, I supported them. Yes, I helped them. How did I develop them? How did I make them stronger? And I didn't. I made them stronger for a shift or maybe two shifts. I made them stronger for the day, but I haven't done anything to help them. And so there's definitely that learning curve of not being in the trenches. I joke that I work probably less hours now than I did as a GM, but I work more days. Yeah. Because it's 7 days a week. There's not a day that doesn't go by that I'm not on my phone. It might be a 15-minute conversation. It might be a single text. Then again, it could turn into I'm having to drive somewhere. I got to go bail somebody out and that kind of thing. But again, it's that never the same day twice, which is what I love. When I was in high school, I was very good at math, very, very good at math. And I had teachers like, maybe you should go into accounting. And I was like, okay, I'm in your class 45 minutes, 3 times a week, and you tell me how annoying I am. Could you imagine sitting in an office with me for 40 hours a week, trying to do numbers? She goes, I would kill you. I said, well, I'm going to hopefully stay alive, and let's do something where I'm not stuck in an office, where I can be a little bit more
I
social.
wouldn't be capable of being chained to a desk. My challenge at Papa John's is being chained to the counter. I love the customer service, love getting in the weeds, love having 50 drivers on the road at one time. Yeah. And that skill set now helps me when I have like a day like today where I have 4 podcasts and some person drops out and I have 7 appointments afterwards and people are texting me this and just that stuff moving around in my mind. That was such a skill set. Besides the customer service, just being nice to people when they're absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I had Worm Nichols Worm Nichols knocked Deontay Wilder down, a professional. He's a boxer. He's been arrested. He probably worked for you at some point. And he's like, my worst experiences ever were with Karens complaining about their steak not being cooked right and just demeaning and mean and cutting you down for something so easy, And that's the reason I think people like Doug Pelham and the Hucks throw so much labor in front of house to you don't have time to complain if your drink's always full. And talk about, that's the worst part about the experience of once you get into 10 or more years in front and back of house is you being in a restaurant, you know whose fault it is. You know that you have a bad table. You know you have had a bad management experience at the grill here, and we talked it out a couple weeks ago. But like the waitress disappeared, and the manager there didn't apologize, and we just left. And then they called and they explained it to me. But then the real manager called, and he's like, "We screwed up." Well, that's it. It's all it took.
Yeah.
But like knowing that the kitchen's in the weeds, or knowing that clearly when I start getting giant chunks of lettuce that somebody didn't do prep. Or like, I've seen the thing that bothers me the most is like, I'm there and there's a 30 top there and I know that they're just not going to do my order until they do those 30 people, as opposed to splitting the kitchen or staggering a little. So they all get their food and then I wait another 20 minutes. That is a disease for people in the restaurant business because once it starts, you can't forgive.
No.
It's done.
Yeah,
it's not like a mistake on a drink or, when a waitress, and you probably have the opposite experience that you can speak to as a supervisor or manager, is when you come in and you see a waiter or waitress usually who's just a rock star on her 3rd or 4th day. And you just want to hang out with their energy.
Oh, yeah.
When the girl's just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and on her game, a little cocky.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing, the good fry guy who's in the kitchen who's just, he meets you, but you can just tell he's like, I'll watch your video. But
yeah.
I'm good.
I got this.
3 minutes on the tenders.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We were in Tuscaloosa, me and my wife and my daughter were in Tuscaloosa yesterday, and we don't eat at normal times. Restaurant people don't eat. I don't eat lunch at 11:30.
Yeah.
I never eat lunch at 11:30. Don't eat dinner at 5:30. I can't. I'm working to those times. So we're in Tuscaloosa, and it's 2:15, 2:30, and we walk into a restaurant, and there's 2 tables in it. It's an empty restaurant, 5 cars in the parking lot. And we kind of wait for about 30, 40 seconds, and finally somebody comes up to the young man. He was nice, but he was like, how many? We said 3. He said, it's going to be about a 20-minute wait. And I said, looked around. And my wife and daughter are already looking at me like, oh, no, please don't do anything stupid. I was like, all right, we don't have time. We'll head on. Because it wasn't about waiting 20 minutes. It was like, you're waiting 20 minutes now just to get sat, how much longer am I going to wait for every other thing?
Even though they've been in the news lately, that was, I've been to Cracker Barrel once since COVID. And what happened with Cracker Barrel here in Columbus, and I voiced my thing to every single person who's ever worked there. I talked to a couple of people at corporate and had to tell them, well, you don't know what you're doing. This unique Cracker Barrel at the tail end of COVID, when it was real hard to do, would seat 15 tables at once and then not seat anybody for an hour. And then seat 15 tables at once and not seat anybody. I'm like, I called them dumb. I'm like, y'all are just dumb. I'm like, did you just sit? Like, we all sat there and wait there. Half the restaurant's empty. And then they sat us down. I'm like, what are you doing to your kitchen? She's like, this is how it's done. I'm like, no restaurant in history has ever done this. Ever, 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 ever. You stagger one at a time, let the tables come through. That's how a kitchen works.
At the grill in Starkville, the brunch there on a game day, there's literally 150 people that stand in line with a locked door.
Yeah.
And we had all the systems in place, and it was, all right, you seat a table, Well, when we swapped to the new POS system, to the TOS system, it used to take, from the first time a guest sit down, it would take, in most cases, 5 to 10 minutes before anything came back to the kitchen. So you could seat, 15, 20 people at a time, not 15, 20 tables, 15, 20 people, because it would self-regulate a little bit. You'd get something at 5, something at 7, something at 9. But when it was getting sent back from the table, we were like, whoa. So what we did is we set our host stand up, and we lined our servers up. If we had 10 servers, and it was, server would seat the first table, and you would wait until that server got back, and then the server would take the next table. And it was and it sounds ridiculous that you would, seat literally one table at a time. Once it was set, they came back, and then you could seat the next one. But it doesn't clear the kitchen. And if you're in the back of that 150-person line, as long as it's moving forward,
you're fine.
And it did. It moved forward.
Disney World theorem,
Almost, and usually those first couple of tables were done eating by the time that 150th, person got there. And by that time we were probably on a wait, but it was a 10 to 15 minute wait. Well, you don't realize I just waited 10 to 15 minutes to get in line, but because I was moving constantly, and you get in. And it's little tricks like that, but yeah, just seating 15 tables. It still
drives me.
COVID messed a lot of people up though. COVID was, it messed with a lot of people.
Well, it showed who the people who weren't handling their restaurants and who didn't have franchise control coming and checking in. Because for my friends at Papa John's, they said it was the busiest time of their life for the management and supervisors go in, because employees everybody got in the habit of not doing stuff. I tell people now, there was a beautiful time in 2020 when every human being and every event was on Facebook, and that's gone. And we're back to 2004 or 5, where you probably got to put an ad in the newspaper. You probably got to put an ad on this, and every single social media thing if you want to get attention. Because there's people, my daughter's like, I got to start looking at Instagram again, because the colleges are Instagram heavy.
Yep.
And they don't care about all SEC schools. And they're like, but they're just don't care about Facebook. I'm like, it's the same thing. It's the same company.
It's literally the same company, but you're right. And depends on which demographic you want to go after. If you want to go after people probably my age and older, then Facebook is still pretty prevalent in our day-to-day.
Yeah.
If you're under 40, Facebook is much smaller. Instagram is probably the more popular. And if you're under probably 30, 25 or 30, you might as well go to TikTok.
Yeah, and it's split up. All these smaller apps are just taking a little piece of, which is how the world has been forever. It's different newspapers. Speak about your TikTok fame. How do you get to that?
Okay, so this was a COVID reaction. Didn't have TikTok. Didn't really know what TikTok was. I thought it was a music app, which is actually what it was when it first started. It was supposed to be about a music type thing, but and I went from working 80 hours a week, not maybe 80, 60 to 70 hours a week, to working 40 hours a week, because we split our management team. You know, you worked lunch, you worked day one week, you worked nights the next week. And so we tried not to.
By the way, half the people listening are like, I thought that's how restaurants work. No.
No, when you're in management, if you work daytime, you also work into the nighttime. Yeah. You don't leave at 4:00 or anything. But to try to keep, us from crossing over and catching COVID and all this, so we split our teams up that way to, A side, B side, whatever. But so I had all this free time on my hands. And I'm an active guy. I'm a musician, but I don't have time to gig or play anywhere because I run restaurants. I like sports, but I don't have time because I run restaurants. But all those other things that I like to do in my spare time, I couldn't do because you couldn't go out and play music. You couldn't go out to watch live music. You couldn't go, there were no more sporting events. And I was just like, had all this free time and this built up creative energy. So I said, all right, well, I'll try a couple of things. And during COVID, there was this huge rush of grown folk, the people that were in above 30, above 35 and 40, that were getting on TikTok and doing the same thing. And I kind of found quite a few like-minded people, and we kind of inspired each other, and we were doing different things. And they say if you really want to blow up, you got to have a niche. And not that 50,000 people is what I call blowing up to the TikTok thing, where you got people at 10.
It's pretty big in Starkville. In rural Mississippi. That's why I had something like, I got on the front page of Reddit like about 7-8 years ago. Like I was the number one, and I'm like, I'm almost like, I retired. I'm done. I'm done. I'm famous. Yeah. And that was it. And then the next day, again, they don't care,
But yeah, so I get on there and I talk a lot of stuff. The people that know me really enjoy when I put the wigs on and typically make fun of my wife or make fun of me through my wife's eyes wearing a wig, theoretically making fun of her. She wasn't the biggest fan of it initially, but she's grown to love it. I'm going to tell myself anyway. But no, so it was, doing different things, trying different things. And, I catch a video and it blew up. The first video was a true story, and where I played both parts. Me and my wife were coming home from Tupelo back to start. We'd done some shopping or whatever. We were coming home, and I don't know. Apparently, a lot of wives do this. She was wearing jeans, and she was like, "I'm taking these jeans off. It's an hour and a half ride home. I don't want to. So don't get pulled over." I was like, "I'm not going to get pulled over. Fine." Literally got pulled over, and like her jeans were in the back seat, so she's like trying to reach back, and the cop comes up and he's like sees her, and she's like pulling her shirt down, and so I made a video kind of playing all those, and that was the first one. It something, I think it was around 500,000 views, which was my biggest view other than that was like 500. I mean, it was just, and it was such a dopamine high. Like my phone, I had to turn notifications off TikTok. I still don't have them on notifications on TikTok, because when you do have something blows up, it's just, your phone just doesn't stop buzzing. And I was like, all right, I found my niche. And then I tried a few other things like that, and it just didn't blow up the same way. The biggest one I had was me just, the camera looking at me and me I found this story where 5 to 7-year-olds were asked, what does love mean? And it was all their definition of what love is. And some of them are hilarious. Some of them are cute. Some of, it's when, dad brings mom home flowers, but then some it's, I can't even remember some of them, but they were cute, but meaningful. And I had this Adele song playing in the back, and that did like 3 million views. It was wild. And I've had a few others that have but none of them are the same. I had one, me and my wife were in Tupelo shopping a couple years ago, and no doubt watched somebody that was a human trafficker following this girl around, and we intervened. And I just tell that story just as a PSA, like, hey, y'all in Tupelo, be aware, not just Tupelo, anywhere, be aware. Like, if you're a 19 or 20-year-old girl, yes, you should be able to do everything you want to do, but please be aware, be vigilant, and keep your eyes on lookout. If you feel any type of way, find a manager, find somebody. And that was actually the first one I did not monetize before then. I was just for fun. I was just doing it for creation and a creative outlet. And that one, I forget the amount of money I made. It was, I don't know, $1,200 or something like that. It was enough that I took the family to Ross Bridge in Birmingham for the weekend.
Love the Ross Bridge.
And I was just like, okay. And but right after that is when we started opening up our second location, and I was not nearly as active. I went almost 6 months without doing anything on TikTok. But yeah, it was just, there's no niche to mine. It was just something different every time. There's definitely some good money to be made out there, and it made me go, I need to really buckle into this niche, but I still don't have a niche. And it is funny that, because I tell my staff, I don't do TikTok, and or they'll be on to say, I need to tell me about TikTok. So is it like, can you learn stuff? What's the benefit of TikTok? Oh man, you can learn. And they start telling me all about TikTok. Had a girl apply at Walk-Ons one time, and she was only available 2 shifts a week. I was like, that's not really worth it. I need at least 4 or 5 shifts a week.
It'd take me 3 months to train you.
Yeah, I mean, and she said, well, I've been dealing with that, but I could, I don't mind. I would market for y'all while I was working, and I've kind of got a following on TikTok. And I said, oh, okay, and I think she had, I think it was like 15 or 18,000 people. It wasn't, nothing to shake a stick at, but I was like, that's cute, and I was like, you're trying to
I just don't know, because I have Ladrico Isaac, who owns Yo Bar here in town. He's got 20-something thousand followers and on Facebook.
Yeah.
And he's like, about a year ago, I just started taking all the steps that say to make money. And I've started doing that recently. It doesn't change my content at all, but I just wasn't doing every last little thing. And now I'm looking at the checks. I'm like, oh, I feel more popular than I did the day before. And like when I intentionally, I've tried, everybody, you try to do something that's going to be viral. Nothing. No. I have the dumbest stuff in the world. Like one of my most popular posts of all time is literally that I wake up real early in the morning. I don't want to wake up my wife, and I got to work with like 2 different brown shoes on. Well, and I don't understand how that's the biggest thing. And like I just had one where the guy who's buying Rubens posted that he wasn't going to shut it down, and all I did was just say what he said. He's a friend of mine, and it's the biggest post I've ever had on Facebook. And I'm like, what doesn't make any? I just thought I was like, I'll just mention this because it's out here. So we're starting to get to the end of our time here. Has the TikTok stuff helped with hiring or relating to employees?
Yes, it definitely helps relating. I've always used, and this, if you're out there and you're ever applying for a job, be mindful of your social media. One of the first things I do when I get an applicant that I look, okay, I'm going to consider hiring this person. I go to all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, and TikTok. And I don't care so much, but if you're out there and you're negative, I had a host one time that applied, and her Facebook profile picture was her flipping the camera off with both hands. It was like, and she was applying to be a host, and I was like, that would be a great person to put up the front door, But the TikTok thing definitely helps me relate to them. I hear some of the songs or the challenges, or they're talking about stuff. So when I can, and this is something that we have to do that our predecessors didn't have to do, is they didn't have to relate to us, because it was you do this or else, or you're fired, because I said so. We got a lot of that growing up. I can't do that in today's world. If you want to hold on to people, you kind of have to learn how to relate to them, at least find some sort of common ground somewhere. And as silly as it is, TikTok has been one way for me to
it's
do that.
Part of it. My youngest daughter didn't think I was cool till she was looking on TikTok, and she ran into Gary Vaynerchuk, the big motivation guy, and he follows me on Twitter. And I'm like, I've been telling you for 10 years. We spent 2 hours together going to conference. He got to a conference, book signing. Nobody else bought the VIP thing. We had connected on Twitter, and we just talked we're the exact same age. He's 4 days older than me. And she's like, as soon as she saw that, she's like, oh, that's cool,
Jenny McCarthy follows me on TikTok.
That's pretty good. Especially for our age group, that's pretty big.
I was like, I'm going, the chick from Singled Out. And they're like, I don't know who that is. I was like, she's on The Masked Singer. And my kids are like, oh, her? Well, Donnie Wahlberg's wife? Yeah, that one.
I mail it in on Twitter/X until Saints football, the day it starts. And as popular as I might be here a little bit on Facebook in Columbus, Mississippi, I'm up there with the Saints people. But Brian Hayday will tell you, if you're going to blackmail me, just go look at my Twitter thing. Because there's some nasty language towards the Falcons fans, and During the game, I might speak out of pocket a little. So
Yeah.
if people hear the podcast and want to support you, they just go to Walk-Ons and order extra wings?
Best way, go to Walk-Ons in Starkville, Walk-Ons in South Haven. Order some wings. We got some nachos on the menu now. Brought queso back, which I thought was a weird move to take it away from the first place. But all your tailgating needs as well. Football season, we got it. 83 TVs in Starkville, 86 TVs in South Haven. There's not a game you won't be able to see. NFL, college, anything.
How do you have 86 allowed in a restaurant? You shouldn't have that at all. You need to get one more. You need one. Ladies and gentlemen, 86 means you're at a fifth.
Yeah.
Canceled. That's another thing you see there where I've sat at Zachary's before and they're like, 86 the Cuban. And I'm like, I want the Cuban. She's like, we still have it. I'm like, no, you don't.
We got 86 TVs, means we have none.
You're done on there. So. All right. Well, anything else you want to tell the great crowd today about TikTok or your support or anything like that?
Oh, man, just go out, have fun, treat people good. Treat restaurant where people give them a little patience during football season. Order an extra beer, it'll be fine.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. My name is Colin Krieger and my day job is real estate. If you're looking to buy or sell, I'd love to talk to you. Or if you just want to sit and talk real estate in a no pressure situation, I'd love to help you. I work with RE/MAX Partners in Starkville, Columbus, and West Point, Mississippi. I can help you find an agent anywhere in Mississippi or anywhere in the country. Just reach out to our office at 662-327-7705 or find me anywhere when you type in 662-329-SOLD.